Hey, what's up, investors? My name is Devin Moreno, and I'm an investor here in the Baltimore City area. And today I wanted to talk to you about what my opinion on single-family homes rented to a single tenant, like a family. That's it, just putting them in the house, and why I think it sucks for especially beginning investors, and what I think you should do instead. So the primary reason that I think single-family homes suck for a lot of newer investors is because most newer investors are trying to quit their jobs using real estate. Now, I go into other videos on why that's a little bit more difficult to achieve unless you have a constant source of revenue outside of your job and outside of the real estate. Get into that in other videos. But let's just say you do it as a new investor. Maybe your goal is just to buy 2 houses a month or 2 houses a year, and in the next 10 years you can retire off of just your cash flow from your real estate portfolio. Well, if you do it that way, the reason that single family homes are often recommended is because they're everywhere. So you have a lot more inventory and options when you, as a newer investor, do not have access to a lot of the networking stuff that, like, getting deals from either people from YouTube or from wholesalers you've known or realtors you've known, just being simply in the business for a lot longer. You, as a newer investor, won't have that. You also might have a lot less skill in analyzing deals to find the very best deals or off-market deals. So oftentimes, single-family homes are not a bad option for the newbie investor who just wants to do it very simply with their 9-to-5 job, then hire it out to a property manager and be done with it. But that process is very, very slow. It will take you some time unless you have someone else doing most of the work for you, and in which case you're gonna need more houses because you're probably paying them to do that. So ultimately, the number that most experts find when calculating how many properties you need to quit your job if you do a single family home rental is about 20. And the reason why is because single family home rentals generally only cash flow about $300 a door. The idea of getting 20 rental properties where you have to learn how to analyze them and learn how to find these things and acquire them. And I go into, the whole idea of you getting them all for free, which, so many YouTube gurus promote. It is a true thing. I've done it, but we go into another video on why that's a little bit of a real unrealistic expectation for most new investors. But that's a daunting task. 20 properties is going to feel like a lot. And of course, I can talk about it in my videos. You have to do private lending. You must do that if you're going to even accomplish that. It just is basically required. And this is almost no matter how rich you are, because if you're watching this video and you still have a day job, you're probably not rich enough to not use private lending. Trust me, millionaires who have seen how fast this blows through your money. So, I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to learn private money and all those other things. But I, in my personal opinion, think you can accelerate the process if you get yourself out of just renting a generic single-family home. Instead, getting yourself into a niche or specialty product within real estate that doesn't rent quite like just a single-family home does. You see, if you are actually instead investing in, like, maybe my personal favorite, let's say duplexes, we'll just start there, but I'm going to go into many others, but like duplex properties, well, now you've taken that single family home that only cash flows $300 and you've turned it now into an average of $600. And it's an average, so it can flex higher or lower than that. But even more so, you've actually reduced your vacancy rate because now you have 2 tenants in the building. So now anytime one of your tenants stops paying rent, the other one is still paying rent. Maybe the one tenant's not paying rent because they moved out or something of that nature and you have to turn over the unit. But note that in the duplex scenario, you're insulated from having multiple mortgages, which as a new investor, you do not want multiple mortgages compounding on you because they happen to all move out at once or something of that nature. So that's really important. Your first 1 to 5 deals are very volatile unless you do it this way, like duplexes or some of the other strategies I'm mentioning, because anytime one of them stops paying, all the rest have to come in to help it because single family homes only generate about $300 a month. It's ridiculous. It sucks. And this is, by the way, after a properly leveraged house. Obviously, if you put 50% down, well, it's going to cash flow way more than that. But of course, in that scenario, you now have put 50% down and your ROI is complete trash. Now, as far as getting a little bit more creative than duplexes, oftentimes I promote what I like to do, which is rooming houses. So I love these because it turns a single family home into a 4-plex or a 5-plex without the expenses of a 4-plex or a 5-plex. Whereas like in a single family home, you now only have one set of, HVAC and kitchen and all that. In a multifamily, you have 4 or 5 or whatever of all of those. And so your costs go up. But in these rooming houses, of course, you can generate way more money than and now your inventory is expanded because you can now buy houses that you previously couldn't buy, and you're making a lot more, and your vacancies are lower, and your turnover costs are much, much lower because you only turn over rooms, you never turn over common areas. So obviously, the main reason people don't get into these is because they're afraid of them, which I get, because if you screw them up, then yes, they're very painful experiences. But most people have rented out rooms before. You can often figure it out. But let's say if you have never, you kind of just don't want to deal with that whole concept. Of course, you can give them to people like myself. I own a property management company that does specialize in managing rooming houses. You can go toward that as well. But long story short, these type of products, cash flow on average $700 for the entire house. Remember, that's after all allocations. So remember, single family homes, $300. These $700 after all allocations, after all maintenance and all of that for both scenarios. So it's similar to a duplex, but in the fact that maybe if you can't find duplexes or you're having trouble finding duplexes, which in Baltimore they're everywhere, but they can still be a little bit tricky to find a really good one, then you can just transition your house to a rooming house like that. Now, another one that's a little bit trickier to do in Baltimore, but I personally love, is Airbnbs. This is one that I am wanting to get into in other markets, and I should clarify, it's not Airbnbs, it's really short-term rentals. Airbnb is just a platform to do a short-term rental. But any of these variations would work, VRBO and whatnot, host camp and such. You basically just rent out the house more like a vacation rental. Now, these are actually possible to do here in the Baltimore City area. They actually are just in the form of 90-day rentals, which are more popular amongst traveling nurses. Just get the rental in maybe the Fells Point area or whatnot around Johns Hopkins University, and now you can instead do a 90-day rental. I have 2 of these in the Fells area, and I love them. I personally love the cash flow they generate. One of them, I have a house that's a 2-bed, 1-bath in a little alley generating over $3,000 a month in revenue just because of the rental nurses. So these are things that and the other one performs pretty well too. It's like a studio, and it generates about $2,400 a month in that one. So basically, long story short, is that these will cash flow tremendously more because of the specialty use and nature of them. They're gonna, now actually what they cash flow is kind of variable. I can't really go into an average because I'm not really an Airbnb expert. Let's be honest, I don't own more than 2 of these things. So I would refer to maybe the Robinsons or, Built on his YouTube channel to get a lot more information on that. But from what I'm understanding is, let's say the Robinsons aim for like 20% of the gross cost. There's a whole bunch of metrics because, of course, your maintenance and whatnot, but you can retire out of much fewer of these, is all I'm saying. A lot less of these will help you out. And, of course, they're higher value products, and so that also helps in the whole equation as well. Now, another one that's actually extremely popular in Baltimore is actually Section 8 or any sort of income assistance sort of program. Now, this one is just like a single family home, but the value of it is it removes a lot of that variable I just mentioned earlier about the vacancy and such. These tenants tend to stay in a nice property forever. They stay on their assisted living forever, not assisted living, but the income assistance forever. So it's very common. A lot of them will never get off these programs, and so therefore you're basically getting guaranteed rent for ever. Now, a lot of these rent programs, if you are strategic enough, you can abuse, in the sense, well, I say abuse, you can kind of work out the numbers in your advantage if you add more bedrooms to the equation and certain layout options or certain amenities like fans and dishwashers and such. You can increase the amount of rent that you're actually receiving from the Section 8 programs. And in DC, this is much easier to do because they actually tell you on their website how much money they're going to pay you for bedrooms. So it makes it super easy to factor in your costs. The best part about that is oftentimes these rates are above traditional market rates, oftentimes, not always. Sometimes you get less, but in Baltimore it can kind of swing wildly a little bit. But overall, knowing that you're having at least a guaranteed rent is a good metric to know in your corner. Now, in this scenario, you will still need, more of these single family homes because they don't cash flow as much as some of the other options I've just mentioned. But the fact that if you make them like your first 5 or 6, then now you at least have guaranteed rent, and they will rent these in a lot lower income areas. So if you're looking at Baltimore area, we're looking at these $50,000 homes. Well, Section 8 is most likely going to be your answer. And the best part about that is the rents you're going to be receiving is easily going to be double the mortgage. So in those cases, because you can go into low income areas where you can buy up lower priced properties and then rent them for very high amounts because the tenant doesn't care because they're not paying the rent anyway, well then great. This is an option to accelerate. That's the way you would actually do that here, especially in the Baltimore City area or in any other place where these programs are available. Now, another one that's popular in this area is assisted living facilities, and this one is mostly what we call like a 4-bed, let's say 4-bed, 4-bath, or 4-bed, maybe 3-bath house. Now, these have to usually have some renovation involved with them. You actually have to design them in a certain way to have the bathrooms, so that way there's no there's no elevation changes, so that way you can easily roll a wheelchair through it. Or let's say the staircases have to be not so twisty and turny as much, for obviously wheelchair access and such, make it easier to bring those accommodations. But the best part about these facilities is that you actually hire someone else, an operator, who then manages the property, and then the property generates tons of cash flow. I mean, an absurd amount. You're talking about like $5,000 a month of cash flow generally if done properly. Let's say if you put 2 people per room, which unlike rooming houses in this scenario, you would put like multiple people per room. And like I said, you don't manage that. You're not licensed or regulated to do so. So you would actually hire an operator to do it, and then they would manage it, and then you just simply own and maintain the property. In these types of circumstances, you can make a ton more. Of course, you want to get these near hospitals, within certain distances of certain hospitals that they really like. And of course, you're going to want to contact an operator first, make sure that the house is conducive for this type of thing. But if you do it correctly, this can generate far more returns than your average single family home. And the best part is they're way more stable. You're not operating it, and you have someone else managing that for you who knows what they're doing with it. So that's something that, once again, I would do much more likely than single family homes. Now, this one is going to be a crazy one as another option, but flipping homes I would rather do than single family homes. Wow, that's kind of super shocking, right? To many of you. Why? If you generate $20,000, which is my minimum on a flip, okay? My minimum, all right, on a flip is $20,000. If you actually generate that, then that is going to accelerate you a lot farther, putting that money into stronger deals that make you more, maybe triplexes, quads and such, that make you more money than just simply buying up a bunch of single family homes that generate you $300 a month on a good day. It's really, the sad fact is about flips, and I made a video regarding this on why I don't do flips. Flips are actually very dangerous for the new investor, and that's why it's hard to recommend them, because you either made money or you lost money. There is no in between. Whereas with buy and hold rentals, you usually only make money, because when you factor in time, no matter how much money you lost, you can always get it back through appreciation and principal pay down and all of that. Well, with a flip, it's pretty merciless toward a newer investor. So if you're gonna use this strategy of me saying, yep, I'd rather do a flip than a single family home, make sure it's a cosmetic renovation. Don't do anything too complicated, because otherwise, yes, multiple things can go wrong and you can lose more money than you actually made, which of course as a new investor is extremely detrimental to your whole beginning process. Now, I could go on about, commercial properties and such. I do think beginning investors should look into those as well. That goes more into the raising private capital portion, which a lot of new investors struggle with and have problems with, especially as a new investor, because no one trusts you with their money. But yes, if you can break into commercial because you have the appropriate leverage, then I would absolutely recommend that over doing this. It's just hard, and a lot of new investors will find that it's very difficult to raise money when you genuinely don't know what you're doing. But if you follow all those other ones, I actually think a lot of those other ones are a lot more easy markets to enter than doing this whole single family home route where you have to buy just dozens of these. And when you're in Baltimore City renting market tenants, you're not going to make enough money to justify the amount of headaches that you're going to be actually dealing with these things. So I actually posted a whole video on that and why I don't like renting in low income areas and such. So, but if you want, go ahead and check that video out. But if you have any other questions, comment below, let me know, and I will talk to you all very soon.